if they defunded the police.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome. And at this time, I'd like to give the opening to Councillor Bill Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I want to talk about one of the key strengths in our city and surrounding area, charity. What is charity? Charity is to give to others which belongs to you. When you give to charity, you experience happiness. Do you know why? Because when you let go of something you love, you give happiness to others. For most people, that part is money. Contrast that, even if you have the slightest thought of taking away from others for yourself, you create various obstructions and difficulty in your life. According to 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 to 9, the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. You must each decide in your heart how much to give, and don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. For God loves a cheerful giver, plus God will generously provide for all that you need. Then you will have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. According to Stats Canada data, declared donations filed for income tax reasons in the province of Manitoba, the median is at $470 per filing. However, in southern Manitoba, nearly every community exceeds that average, and the city of Steinbach comes in at $2,140 per filing, the highest in Canada of any city over 10,000 people. This has been the case for many years running. Not to forget Blue-Monort, which comes out the highest in Canada at $3,830 per filing, leading all, and giving to charities in Steinbach as well. Thank you very much. Although we have countless charities in Steinbach that benefit all of us, today I want to recognize 3 of our local charities that benefit that benefit from these generous people. And in return, these charities benefit our community beyond measure, providing many jobs in our community, as well as making Steinbach a very attractive place to live and raise a family. Number 1 is Helping Hand Steinbach. As I talked to Hank Clausen last week, who serves as the leader for the last 38 years, he relays the following stats. They serve over 300 families, hampers, where they provide $140 worth of groceries every 2 weeks of the year, an average of 4.5 people per household. They also donate to other food banks in our region when they experience a shortage. All these donations come from local businesses, as well as many private individuals. Number 2 would be the Haven Group, which is an EMC mission. The Haven Group has served Steinbach, an area, for 75 years, providing our seniors with housing and care homes. In 1946, they built the first Rest Haven home for 6 beds on Hanover Street. Then in 1960, they built a much larger Rest Haven that could house 66 residents, which is now Parkview Apartments on Quaker Avenue. In 1970, they built Cedar Avenue, which is another care home. That's on Quaker as well. And then they built Cedar Apartments, I should say, on Wilson. In 1984, the current Rest Haven was opened on Woodhaven Avenue, then Friesen Street. And in 1995, Phase 1 of Woodhaven and Phase 2 of Woodhaven was completed in 1997 with 66 life lease units and 20 units geared towards income. Today we are looking forward to the completion of the new Rest Haven care home, consisting of 143 suites, with each having its own bathroom and showers, 12 separate homes in one, 11 homes with 12 units per home, and 1 with 11, which totals 143. This was a joint venture with the Bethesda Foundation. The 2 charities raised $6.55 million, just under 20% of total cost, and this was looked on very favorably regarding receiving funding from our government. The 3rd charity I want to recognize is the Bethesda Foundation. Representing this foundation, I talked to Daryl Penner, who stated that the key charity was formed in 1980 for the purpose of improving health care for our city and region. The directors are local business leaders, as well as healthcare professionals, doctors, and they have completed the following projects over the last 15 years. In 2007, Bethesda Regional Cancer Care was built. 2012, the Crisis Stabilization Unit on 450 Main Street providing care in our community for people experiencing emotional crises in their lives. In 2014, the expansion to the emergency care at Bethesda Hospital and the ER, plus the ambulance garage. And in 2017, Bethesda Primary Care Center, housing Steinbach's Family Medical Clinic and Community Health Services. Also in 2017, they built the Stonebridge Wellness Center, complementing the Bethesda Primary Care Center, offering healthcare-related services. And in 2018, they created the Healing Gardens next to the Bethesda Hospital, providing a restful, physical, mental, and spiritual well-being atmosphere for the sick and their families. Today, the foundation is a major contributor to the Rest Haven project, pledging to raise $5.3 million. Small note, Canada's #1 charitable giving is towards healthcare. Let us continue to be charitable, and we will continue to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiebert. Council, we have the agenda in front of us. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Pinner. Any comments? Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council, we have the minutes of April 20th, 2021 regular council meeting. We've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Swykstra. Any comments?
No comments.
Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any business, is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. It is just a little after 7:35, so we'll go directly to the public hearing. This is 6A, variance V 2020 or 2021-10. This is referring to 301 and 305 Main Street on page 4. Mr. Warkentine, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor and councillors, this application for variance file V-2021-10 for 301 and 303 Main Street is being applied for by 100582117 Manitoba Inc. The owner of the properties is Steinbach Credit Union Limited. Purpose of the variance application is to allow or to permit 5 parking stalls for the proposed use, whereas a total of 11 stalls are required for a drinking establishment / art gallery. The applicant is proposing to use the property for a microbrewery and art gallery. Notices, as are required under the Planning Act, have been issued. There are 5 items of correspondence that have been received since the preparation of the agenda, copies of which were placed in Council's mail bins. Insofar as comments from administration, more recently there have been 2 other variance applications Council has dealt with previously with respect to reducing the required number of parking stalls in Steinbach's downtown. Subject to particular conditions for each. Ultimately, Council did approve both applications as listed in administration's comments. With respect to the application, recommendation is that Council approve the variance application subject to the provision of the additional required or the required parking stalls in an alternate location.
Thank you, Mr. Warkentine. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to speak? Yes. Okay, take the podium and just state your name and your address just for the record, and then you can proceed.
All right. Hello, I'm Stephanie Clausen. My address is 36131 Road 37E. Does that count? Giroux, Manitoba. And I'm from 10058-217 Manitoba, operating as the Public Brewhouse and Gallery. We are seeking to vary the minimum parking requirements at 301 Main Street to 5 spaces from 11 for the purpose of operating a microbrewery and a tasting room with an art gallery. We've applied for a variance because of the unique circumstances of the property. It has more parking spaces than what the landlord has allotted to us, but those spaces are already included in a pre-existing parking agreement and can't be assigned twice. To compensate, the landlord has offered us scatter parking in the Steinbach Credit Union parking lot, and that will more than make up for the few spaces that we are short on the property. In terms of parking demand, Our site plan, stamped by an architect, indicates that we have capacity for 50 patrons. And we've consulted a traffic engineer who confirmed that granting a variance would not cause a shortage of parking in the vicinity, mainly because our hours of operation overlap very little with the surrounding businesses and organizations. So our proposed hours of operation would be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturdays noon to 11, and will be closed on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday for now, although opening on Sunday afternoons is a possibility in the future. So the credit union closes an hour after we open. Steinbach Place closes at the same time we open. We're closed Sunday mornings when the church's parking lot needs are highest next door to us. And we've contacted the leadership of Calvary Church, who confirmed that they have no problem with having a drinking establishment next door, and actually shared our information with the friends that they knew would be interested in what we're doing. So in addition to having hours of operation with little overlap, our location is pedestrian and cyclist friendly, which reduces our overall parking needs. And as you all know, the zoning bylaw states that the city wants to encourage growth in the central business district and promote an increase in restaurants and other entertainment in this area. The official community plan states that one of the objectives of the CBD is to ensure that Steinbach retains its role as a regional center for commercial, cultural, and social activities. Another is to provide a central focus for the commercial, civic, and community activities of the city. And we, the public, align with all these policies. We want to create a space for conversation and culture that is welcoming and inviting. Revitalization, building reuse, pedestrian amenities, 3 more guiding principles in the CBD, and our business will revitalize one of the older buildings on the block. Our patio will beautify a vacant lot. Our gallery will contribute to lively street life that the city wants to see in the CBD. So, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I will just ask you to stay at the podium for now.
Sure.
Council, are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, you can take your seat. That'll be good. Okay, is there anyone here with questions, objections, or concerns for this file? Okay, I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with questions, comments, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilor Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make the motion that we approve the variance requested.
And Councilor Seaman seconded? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a straightforward request. Obviously, under the bylaw, they'd be required to have 11 stalls, and they're asking to have 5. There is precedent where in the downtown area, because we want to be flexible and we want to see the downtown have new businesses and new activity, I think there's a recognition that we have to have some flexibility here. And so in this case here, I'm comfortable with saying that they can get by with the 5 parking stalls. Obviously, if there are more people there, there's other places that people will find to park. So I do want to note the motion is not requiring they find other parking stalls in a formal arrangement somewhere else. The motion is specifically allowing the variance that they are requesting for the 5 parking stalls. I think that is, I think that's sufficient here. I think a microbrewery with an art gallery is a great idea in the downtown, and I look forward to seeing it go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Swagstra. Anything further, Councilor Seaman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with comments made by Councilor Swagstra. I also think 5 stalls is enough. There's enough parking. They're working different hours than the downtown, and our downtown is fairly empty of people, traffic, and I think it is important for us to put more business downtown, and this will do that, and it might then attract other business as well in the downtown and off hours, and I think that is something the city's always had a goal towards, providing our community with a a walkable downtown that has entertainment spots similar to this. So I am very in favor of this.
Thank you. Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Council, I would just like to say, yes, I'll support the motion also. Council, when we've looked at Steinbach and our downtown and what our vision for our downtown is to be vibrant the entire day from early morning to later in the evening. And this, having businesses that will work with this and offset, be open at different times will do this. So when people are not working, they'll be able to come enjoy a beverage, see the gallery and meet. And you know what, we're not gonna always be under COVID. So we gotta look past COVID, and we have to realize that one day we will actually be able to get together and sit across the table from each other and enjoy each other, enjoy the fine arts. And that's why I think this is generally a draw. This will be a genuine draw for our downtown, and I think this is a good fit. And I do believe that in the nicer months, which there's usually what, 2, maybe 3 months in Manitoba that are nice enough to walk, that people will be walking. And I hope to see that. I hope to see people come out with their pedal bikes and they come out walking, skateboards, whatever, and enjoy each other on our sidewalks. So call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, council, there are no delegations, there are no reports and recommendations to the city manager, so we'll go to administration. 9A, the accounts payable in the back of the book. We've all had a chance to look them over and looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Penner. Any comments? No comment. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. 9B, we've got Bylaw 2170. This is 55 Life Science Parkway. This is first reading, councils. Starts on page 16 of the package. And Mr. Wortling, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, this Bylaw 2170 is a bylaw related to an application for rezoning for the property located at 55 Life Sciences Parkway. The application seeks to rezone the subject property from M1, light industrial, to EI, educational and institutional. Although a church has existed on this site for some time, approved by a conditional use some time ago with no apparent conflicts, the proposed zoning amendment does appear that it would be incompatible with the existing uses in the area, being an industrial park. Infrastructure within the industrial areas is designed to support certain kinds of uses, and it may not be able to or be suitable for other uses. And in this case, the infrastructure needs for an industrial park, in the opinion of administration, is very different than those required for a school site. As a result, recommendation from administration is that council deny first reading for zoning bylaw 2170.
Thank you, Mr. Worthington. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Can I ask a question of administration?
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if this church was operating church programs during the day, like BBS or whatever other programs church would offer during the day. Would they require to come to the city for that, or is this just strictly because they're changing it to education? Like, can they operate during the day there, basically?
If they are operating with uses related to activities as a church, it is permitted to operate under the conditional use, yes.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve first reading.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Siemens? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I would like to open this up and hear from the area to hear if the businesses in the surrounding area have issues with this or take issue with this. The fact is, when it was approved, it was before my time, but I understand that a church isn't ideal in an industrial park, but the fact is, it was approved, and I think we should at least be open to hearing what they have to say, particularly since if they were operating church activities during the day, it would be a non-issue. So I would just like to open it up and hear what they have to say.
Anything further, Councillor Siemens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, for me, this is a tough one, simply because it is a church in the middle of an industrial park, and I understand all of that. I thought initially that we could get a conditional use, but that's not allowed on this either. But I agree with Councillor Penner that we should go to a public hearing and hear from the various parties.
Councillor Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to speak against the motion, and I understand that council had decided as a conditional use to permit the church to go there. I was on council at the time and I voted in favor of that, and that was a contested vote. But allowing a church there on a conditional use is very, very different from rezoning the property from light industrial to educational institutional. These are completely different things. When you have a conditional use to allow the church there, it's still in an industrial property. We're simply allowing the church to be there and to operate. But by changing the zoning, that means that forever on out, you will have a section of land zoned educational institutional in the middle of an industrial park. And let's imagine for a moment that, let's say the school grows. Let's say it changes. Let's say they decide to sell and another school operates there and decides to open up, and that would all be permitted because the zoning has changed. And if we were to take the names off this and simply look on a planning basis, does it make sense to put a school in the middle of an industrial park? The obvious answer is no. We wouldn't even consider this as far as proper planning. And so I think it's pretty obvious the reason the administration is recommending that we deny first reading is that if we go to a public hearing, the answer is going to be exactly the same. The answer is going to be the information here that we've received is going to be the same. And the information is going to be that it doesn't make sense to zone a section of land, educational, institutional, forever in the middle of an industrial park. There are very different uses, and putting a school there does not make sense. And so we have to look beyond the question of what could they technically do in the church now, and could they technically have church activities during the day? Yes, they could technically do those sorts of things, but that's not what we're being asked here. We're being asked, are we open to rezoning the entire property, educational, institutional? And I think the answer has to be a clear no.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Oh, yeah, I would just like, did you want, this isn't
Oh,
my
you want to
quote.
speak? Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Zwagstra, and I also won't be supporting the motion, and for much of the same reasons as what was mentioned. My voting record has been quite clear that when people own property, they should be able to do what they want on their property. However, this is a situation of city planning, and this is an area that isn't fully developed yet in terms of its industrial capabilities. There is potential for considerable more traffic in the industrial park, including heavy traffic, and this, by rezoning a parcel of land, that's permanent. And by it being permanent, that does offer the opportunity for a different institution to then, at that point, come into an industrial zone. Perhaps an institution that does have a lot more foot traffic wanting to be coming to their property. And the infrastructure is built to be an industrial area, not to have walking paths, not to have wide roads that accommodate bike traffic. And by rezoning this, we're passing the buck on to later issues with different that other councils may have to deal with in the future, such as putting in infrastructure of walking paths where there is no infrastructure available to make that work. So for those reasons, I will not be able to support the motion.
Go ahead, Councillor Hiebert.
Just when I read this file, I guess the first question that came to mind is, why was a church allowed to be built in that area in the first place, industrial? And Councillor Swagstra addressed that was a conditional variance at the time. My concern now, and it goes along with what Councillor Swagstra said, if that building sells, or if they decide that they want to build a bigger school, they want to extend it and add another 200, 500 children there, what would stop us at that time for allowing a larger building to be built there? And so my concern is I don't want a school in an industrial area, especially when there's the potential that that will be extended or could be extended in the future.
Thank you. Anything further of council?
I will confirm what several of the councillors have said, that this area is zoned industrial, and if we do allow a school, like sidewalks will be asked for in a few years, and if they expand, it will create some issues. I feel bad for the church, because they want to put a school there. I empathize with them, but I see this as a no way.
Okay. Anything further of council? Anything in closing, Councillor?
Yeah, I would just like to say there is a school close by to the area, and there's lots of residential, so it's not an industrial park that's just kind of in the middle of nowhere and surrounded by industrial. So in terms of that use, I don't think it's that out of place, not any more out of place than a church. A church is already in that area. And I understand what you're saying, that it stays with the property. And that's unfortunate because this is a school that is directly connected to the church. It's a church school. So I do think there's a little bit of maybe gray area in that they're operating it in their building for their church. If it wasn't, they could operate other things during the day. So I just think it's not quite so clear cut.
Well, council, call for the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Okay, that is defeated. Mr. Worthington, we still need to go forward on a motion for,
Yes, then
this
I
one is
would recommend that the next step would be a council entertain a motion to deny.
okay. Council, because of the vote we just had, we need a motion to deny. Councillor Penner,
Motion to deny?
second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This wasn't lightly taken. Was definitely consideration made to the fact that this is a church and they are currently operating in there. There is also a big difference in terms of its operation in its hours between a school and a church, whereas an industrial park operation hours are primarily Monday through Friday during the days, whereas churches are primarily on Sundays. There are programs that are allowed to operate. However, it's usually children that aren't of age that are going to be transporting themselves to and from school. So there's a lot more transportation issues that you come into in terms of foot traffic, pedestrian traffic, as well as bicycle traffic, that it's just not fit to be going into an industrial park area. So that's the reason that I've chosen to deny this motion.
Anything further? Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
Nothing further.
Well, council, this is a difficult decision. It's tough, but I think a lot of good comments have been said, and I think we'll go right into the question. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll go to 9C. This is the Bylaw 2173, Administrative Penalty, first reading. It starts on page 28 of your agenda. Mr. Worthington, could you please introduce this file?
Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I will defer this to Mr. Thiessen, our Corporate Services Manager.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Bylaw 2173 is an amendment to Steinbach Administrative Penalty Bylaw number 2076, altering the Schedule A of that bylaw to include a number of additional bylaws that will be able to be enforced using the Municipal Bylaw Enforcement Act. So it gives some additional tools to our bylaw, and animal control staff is essentially what it does. This bylaw was discussed at the April 13 Strategic Priorities Committee meeting. At that time, direction from council was to proceed with first reading of the amending bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Thiessen. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion for first reading.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Siemens. Go ahead, Councillor Swagstra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been discussed at a previous SBC meeting, and basically what we're doing here is we are adding some additional options to in terms of dealing with bylaws that are broken, and this just simply adds to the list where we can deal with it administratively, as we currently do with the parking and such. And so this just simply streamlines the process, makes it simpler for fines to be, for these things to be adjudicated more quickly and decisions to be made. So we discussed this at our SBC, and the consensus was that it makes sense for us to proceed.
Anything further, Council? Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Okay, council will call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We got 9D. This is bylaw 2171. This is 2021 Realty and Education Tax Levy. This is first reading on that. It starts on page 34. Mr. Workteam, would you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, bylaw 2171 is a bylaw representing the city's 2021 Realty and Education Tax Levy. And the bylaw is being presented to council for first reading, along with consideration, I should say it was prepared in relation to the city's 2021 financial plan. The Realty Tax Levy bylaw sets an overall municipal mill rate for 2021 of 13.7 mils, which is an identical rate to 2020. The tax levy requirements for both the Hanover School Division and also the province of Manitoba are also incorporated into the bylaw. Recommendation is for council to give this bylaw first reading.
Okay, council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Schweikster,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion for first reading.
do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Penner, go ahead, Councillor Schweikster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is first reading of our the Realty and Education Tax Levy, and as was discussed at our financial plan hearing, we are keeping the municipal mill rate the same in 2021 as it was in 2020 at 13.7 mils. I think this is the responsible decision, and so we should move ahead with first reading.
Thank you. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing?
No.
Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, council will go to 9E. Bylaw 2172. This is the 2021 business tax levy. This is the first reading. Begins on page 58. And Mr. Working, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, bylaw 2172, which as you mentioned is the 2021 business tax levy bylaw, is similar in form in that council must approve this tax levy by bylaw. This does relate to the business taxes and business fees for the city for 2021. Recommendation is for council to give this bylaw first reading.
Okay, council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor,
Sure.
motion to approve?
Motion to
Councillor
approve.
Siemens?
Yes.
And second by Councillor Hiebert. Go ahead, Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The business tax levy has been part of the city taxes for many years. At one point, it was well over 12%, and it has been reduced over the years. The last, I believe, 12 years, roughly, it has been at 0.5%, and a lot of that goes to the Steinbach Chamber. But this is, the motion is to approve the levy at 0.5%, and this remains unchanged from previous years.
Thank you.
Nothing further to add to that.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, council, is there any questions of council? Seeing none. We've got correspondence and petitions. 11A, this is the Epp Library minutes of April 21, 2021. We'll take, how would you like to proceed? Take it as information? Okay. There are no other business. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, council, next regular meeting is Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, 7:30. Thank you.